Welcome back to CBS Mornings, where we're talking about 10 years since the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, and the fact that the families of the victims are still fighting for change. 20 children, 6 educators murdered by a young man using an AR-15 style rifle. And since then, there have been nearly 4,300 additional mass shootings in these United States where 4 or more people were killed. Recent data show that firearms used in assaults and suicides and accidents all combined are now the leading cause of death among our nation's children. In the aftermath of Sandy Hook, several of the victims' families vowed to fight for improved safety and gun legislation. Nikki Battiste sat down with 2 parents, each of whom lost a son.
Dylan was this gorgeous little boy with these gigantic blue eyes. He was always smiling and laughing, and he had this really high-pitched, sing-songy voice. He was just an absolute joy. I still can't wrap my head around that it's 10 years.
On the last day of Daniel's life, he, out of the blue, before we went to school that morning, he asked me to show him something on the piano. So I taught him how to play Jingle Bells. That was in the last few hours of his life.
The morning of December 14th, 2012 would be the last time Nicole Hockley and Mark Barden ever saw their youngest children, 6-year-old Dylan Hockley and 7-year-old Daniel Barden.
At what point did you start to think about fighting for change, gun legislation, safety in schools?
I started talking about change at Dylan's memorial service. I didn't know what the change would be, but that something would come from this. This wouldn't just be a senseless tragedy.
1 month later, they helped launch Sandy Hook Promise, a nonprofit focused on protecting America's children from gun violence.
Look for warning signs and threats.
Its Know the Signs programs teach children and adults how to identify at-risk behaviors and intervene to get help. And there are signs it's working. The programs are used in more than 23,000 schools nationwide, which the group says have helped stop at least 11 credible planned school shooting attacks in 7 states.
The spectrum of violence it's an escalating thing. Someone doesn't go straight to suicide or homicide. So we're focused on what we call upstream violence prevention. How do we, at the earlier end of that scale, intervene and get help?
They found an ally in Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, newly sworn in just weeks after the shooting.
For me, the last 10 years has been about trying to rattle this country into understanding that the epidemic of gun violence is every day. There are over 100 people dying every single day from suicides, from homicides, from accidental shootings in this country.
A new study shows the U.S. has reached its highest number of gun deaths in nearly 30 years, accelerating recently with a 20% jump from 2019 to 2021. And in the past decade since Sandy Hook, there have been nearly 4,300 mass shootings, 38 of them at schools. One took the lives of 17 students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018.
We are going to be the kids that you read about in textbooks. We are going to be the last mass shooting.
To me, the emergence of students after Parkland as the leaders of this movement in many ways is, a story of why we have now begun to see success legislatively.
Success, he says, in the form of the new bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
But I'm here on this floor to beg, to literally get down on my hands and knees and beg my colleagues. Find a path forward here.
The bill became federal law this summer, just 31 days after 19 students and 2 teachers were murdered at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. It's the most significant gun-related legislation in 30 years and includes enhanced background checks for people ages 18 to 21, invests money into mental health resources, and provides funding to states for red flag laws, which enable authorities to confiscate guns from individuals deemed dangerous.
Is it enough?
It doesn't solve the epidemic, but it saves thousands of lives. There are some people who said, well, this isn't universal background checks. This isn't a ban on assault weapons. It's not worth it. Well, we're saving lives.
There has been change at the state level, too, since Sandy Hook. The number of states requiring background checks on all handgun sales went from 14 to 21. 19 states added red flag laws, and 8 have banned assault rifles, including Connecticut. Assault rifles account for more than 85% of mass shooting deaths.
Has your work and this journey you took on together helped in the healing process? Helped you through grief?
That's a tough one. Yeah, yes. I mean, short answer, yes.
It's a paradox because it's helping, because it's doing something, and it's helping because it's providing a legacy and impact and change, but it's also constantly re-traumatizing. So it can be helpful for healing and damaging at the same time.
How do you want your sons to be remembered?
First of all, I want people to know who Daniel was, to look at his little face and think about that beautiful, robust life full of happiness and understand that that was taken away violently. And then to think, what can I do to be part of the change to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
And I want them to look at my son and see their own children in his eyes and think about what can you do as a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle to take meaningful action so that this never happens to you.
Or anyone.
Or anyone.
Barden and Hockley want us to remember all the lives lost 10 years ago today. 20 students and 6 educators. To learn more about each of them, you can visit mysandyhookfamily.org. I've spoken with Nicole and Mark several times in the last decade, and I'm always struck by their strength. And the work that they've done is remarkable. I want to point out again, their crisis center, Sandy Hook Promise, has helped stop at least 11 school shootings. That's remarkable. That's not something we hear or are able to talk about in the news, because a lot of times these schools want to remain anonymous.
Right.
And the way that it happened is they received the tips from students, and then they contacted the schools.
No, and you also think about they have mourned the loss of their children longer than their children were alive. That's always something that strikes me. And I've heard parents say, please don't call it a 10-year anniversary, which, you know, I hadn't thought about it that way. They said, because an anniversary is normally celebratory.
Positive connotation.
It's a positive thing, and they're asking all of us. I think it's a good message to send to the public, say it was 10 years ago today, or we're mourning the loss, but please don't use the word anniversary.
It's a dividing line. It splits their life into before and after, and they're using the after to try to make sure other families are not in this situation. It's a very valiant effort.
Nicole and Mark asked us to call it a remembrance today.
Remembrance. That's what we'll do. Nikki, thank you very much.